Wow, I'd sure like to meet that pastor you guys were talking about. Oh, that's really kind. The sermon tonight is titled, Getting Ahead of Yourself, Getting Ahead of God. Years ago, we were living in town, and my dad built a house out in the country, out on, we call it the Mountain Road. They had bought 20 acres from Old Man Koppel. If you remember Old Man Koppel, he had a turkey about this big that chased me around his place and dang near got me, but his wife come out with a broom and beat that turkey down, and so I'm here today to be able to preach to you. But he bought these 20 acres, and he would go out after work, and I come to realize and appreciate my dad so much. He built 2 or 3 of the houses that we lived in. And so he, just like many of us, worked all day long, took care of the kids when needed, and then went and worked evenings and weekends to build a house. And so I loved this house because we got to move in early, and we were downstairs in the basement, and we had just quilts and different things to set up the rooms. Anyone ever done that? It's kind of cool for a kid. And so we did have a bathroom set up and stuff, and my grandpa would come and he would bring commodity peanut butter. I remember that. And it was in those gallon cans, and you opened it up and it was like oil, about this much oil. You had to stir it and all that, but good peanut butter. And so we were there, and we were in the basement, and Dad finally finished up this hop, and he was doing all these small jobs that you got to do right before you're done with the house. And the last thing to do was a little bit of landscaping. And so we rented a sod machine, and we went out to Johnny Fry's, and we cut the sod. I remember, well, he did. I was like 6 years old. I was probably in his way most of the time. We went out and got sod, and we tried to help roll it up, and he kept going back and forth in the pickup to lay the grass. And Mom came home from work one night late. The next morning, we had grass in the yard, and she appreciated that. But Dad was getting done with this job, and finally, it got to the last thing he had to do was burn a brush pile back behind the house, and the yard would basically be done. And so Dad was excited to do it, just to be done. Ain't anyone ever happy when you're done with the job? I finished this thing. And so he lit it on fire, and he was enjoying himself, and I was enjoying watching the fire until Mom came out. Now, if you knew my mom, she was a little bit had a kind of anxiety-ridden, and she would kind of start to squawk about, Don, is this safe? She always said, Don. You knew it was in trouble when he was Don. Don, is this safe? And Don, it's so close to the house, and Don, it's getting hot. And then my dad would kind of get nervous. He'd have that nervous look in his face, but he'd be like, there's no problem, it's going to be fine. About that time, we had a clothesline between the burning brush and the house, and there was a quilt on there. Woof, it went up in flames. Mom turns to Dad and says, we're in trouble here. And Dad's like, no, it's going to be fine. It's just an old quilt. But, you're going to burn the house down. The point I make for that is Dad got ahead of himself. Had he been a little bit smarter and moved the brush pile away, he would not possibly burn the house down. Now, I share that story because about 2 or 3 years ago, we had a brush pile out here the last time we built onto our parking lot, which, praise the Lord, we've done it 3 times. And so we had this huge brush pile, and Bob and I were going to burn that one. I think it was like a Saturday. And we tried everything. We could have got it with tires and all that, but we tried to burn that brush pile. We just couldn't do it. And so finally, we said, you know what, let's try it next weekend. And so we're going to meet like at 11 o'clock, and we're going to burn that brush pile. Well, I got here about 9:30 or so. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead and burn that brush pile. I'll try it, because I'm probably spending hours to get this thing going. One match, and it's now burning, okay? And it's like roaring, and it's like, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would have said, that one's too hot for us. It was that hot. All right? It was hot. And so it's burning and burning, and that's not the problem, but the problem is it's so hot it's starting to creep into the woods, and the leaves are catching fire. Now it's moving this way towards our neighbor's house, okay? And so here I am, this wall of defense between this fire, and I went and got a pail in here, and there was a puddle down there. There's kind of a swamp in the springtime there, and I would take a pail and go up there and, like throw it like this, and it would evaporate before it came out of the pail. It was so hot. And then I would go back and get another one, and my face is red. I'm nervous. I have my dad's anxiety about this big fire thing going on. I'm having flashbacks and whatnot. And I tell you what, somebody stopped, and they're like, Brian, you seem like you're going to have a heart attack. And I'm like, I'm like 800 degrees going into this fire. And I realized if I just would have stepped back and maybe spent a little time out here where it was cool and poured some water and got ready for it to come to me, probably would have had a better chance. But I kept going into the fire basically to try to throw this monstrosity out. I share that with you because Proverbs 3:13 says, happy is the man who finds wisdom and the man who gains understanding. You would have thought I would have learned something from my dad about burning brush. I come to realize that I learned something. I found wisdom and I found some understanding, and I'm not going to burn a brush pile like that for a long, long time. I'm going to make sure that I don't get ahead of myself. I'm going to make sure that I've got water or a hose or other people around, so if there gets to be trouble, I'm not alone in fighting that fire. I'm a fireman, honey. Yeah. So anyways, I learned some things, and that's what happens oftentimes from our mistakes. We learn things. But so many times our mistakes are because we get ahead of ourselves. Anyone ever done any building at home? Maybe there's 7 or 8 steps to complete some project. And you're on about step 7 saying, this is going great. And all of a sudden you run into where you should have went back to step 2 and done that first. Ever do that one? So then you got to tear all this apart and go back to step 2 so they can get back to 7. We get ahead of ourselves. Men are worse because we don't look at any instructions either, right? We're going to put this shelf together and it's done and it's like leaning like this and we got 18 extra parts and we're like, I don't know why they ship that stuff here. Right. And your wife's like, let me tear it apart and start over. We get ahead of ourselves. Proverbs 12:15 says this, the way of the fool is right in his own eyes, but he who heeds counsel is wise. How many of us think that we got it all figured out sometimes, yet we're so far ahead of ourselves, we're getting way into an area that we don't understand. And how many of you have ever had somebody say, they're watching you and finally you discover the mistake and they say, I thought that was wrong, but I was just waiting to see if you were going to figure that out. It's like, tell me before I got the problem, right? In other words, they see that you're getting ahead of yourself. Parents that raise children oftentimes are spending a lot of time trying to rein their kids back in because they see them living older than they really are. Stepping out saying, well, I can do this and I can do that, or I want to do this and I want to do that, and they get ahead of themselves. And parents' job is to try to help them avoid the problems of getting ahead of yourself. So we keep in mind that life is difficult sometimes and we think we got it all figured out, but a couple of the statements that you hear when you're kind of getting out ahead of yourself is, I thought you were doing it wrong, but I figured you had a plan. That's what we just shared. Or a lot of times you'll hear someone say, oh, I got ahead of myself. And then you start all over. Tear up whatever it is and begin all over. And that's oftentimes how it is for life, but it doesn't need to be a pattern like that in our life, in our physical lives, but it sure doesn't need to be a pattern in our spiritual life. If we revisit Proverbs 3:13, it says, happy is the man who finds wisdom and the man who gains understanding. Just listening to the poem that we heard tonight. That family gained understanding. That family is happier than they have been for years. They're gaining understanding and they're finding wisdom with Jesus Christ. And so they're not getting ahead of themselves when it comes to Christ. They're stepping as He is teaching and they're stepping as they're learning and they're moving forward, gaining the knowledge that Jesus Christ wants us to know. But see, that's the whole issue that we have in life. Getting ahead of ourselves gets to be a pattern in life and on earth, and maybe it's got some mild consequences, maybe it doesn't. There's the true story about a gentleman in the Perm area. I'll leave his name out, but he was going to build an RV park by Perm. Great plan. And then he put lots of work and effort into it. Had a huge lodge. It was next to a bowling alley and a supper club. It was hooked to that. Had several RV sites. He had trees moved in. He had beautiful little lights that went down the roads and all these different things. And it was nearing completion. And so he finally went to the city of Perm and he said, it's just about done. Now bring out the water and sewer and we're gonna get this baby rolling, because Perm wouldn't mind having that. Well, Perm said that's going to cost over $3 million and we're not going to do it. He got ahead of himself. Great plans. Something would have been something great for Perm. It sits empty now. The lodge burned down. It sits empty. That guy's passed away. We get ahead of ourselves sometimes. I know some people are out there dating or looking for a husband or a wife, and sometimes we get our emotions hurt and we say, I'm lonely and I want to have this relationship, and we get ahead of ourselves and we start to date this person or jump into that relationship, and we never stop to say, God, will you walk it through? Walk it through. You set the speed. You bring the man into my life or the woman into my life. You do these things. I will slow myself down and I will wait on you. But how many of us have trouble waiting? That waiting word is a tough one. We just want to have it as quick as possible, So sometimes we get ahead of ourselves and it's not such an issue. But when it comes to our spiritual getting ahead of God, it's a huge issue. It's something that we don't want to do. And so we practice in our own personal lives, and as we gain control, as we gain knowledge, as we gain wisdom in Christ, and we're not so quick to jump, we're not so knee-jerk reaction kind of people, all of a sudden we find the mistakes and those getting ahead of ourselves starting to dissipate, starting to disappear. Now we're walking in God's timing. Now we're walking in God's plan. How many of you know there's a peace when you do that? Everything seems right. It doesn't mean it doesn't go wrong from time to time, but you have that sense of understanding that I'm doing exactly what Christ would have me to do, and there's such a peace that comes upon it. It's like I know my purpose now. And when I serve Christ, I feel like I'm complete. That hole, that void that I've been chasing to try to fill, all of a sudden is filled because I'm following Christ. There's been other examples, too, about getting ahead of yourselves. Some of you are older. 1948, November 3rd, the Chicago Daily Tribune had Dewey defeats Truman on the headlines. Remember that one? See, what happened was in those days they had switched over some printing presses. They had to start printing hours ahead of handing out the paper. And so they had talked to their main guy that was kind of in the political scene, and he had picked the 4 out of the 5 candidates over the last 20 years and had picked them correctly, and they were elected president. So they said, who's going to win? Who's going to win? They said, Dewey's going to win. And so that's why they printed it. Man, did they get ahead of themselves? Because Truman got a hold of that the next day, and he was holding up, and he said, it's not the way I heard it. In 1980, Ronald Reagan against Jimmy Carter. A week prior to the election, they had Jimmy Carter points and points ahead in the polls. In fact, they were so sure that he was going to have a landslide victory that they booked a huge place for the big party, and they had booked one of the most popular bands. The big bands was going to come, and they were all set up to have this celebration party. Election night comes. Ronald Reagan took 40, I think it was like 44 or 46 of the states. Landslide victory for Ronald Reagan. Sometimes we get ahead of ourselves listening to other people, listening to what other people have to say, and we say, what they're saying must be true, or so-and-so gave me this advice, so that's the way I'm going to go, but it might get you where you don't need to be, ahead of God. So we as Christians, we sit here tonight and we say, you know what? If I truly want to purpose in my heart to follow Jesus Christ, then I need to make sure that I slow myself down, that I get into prayer, that I get into the Word, that I understand what the Word says, and I put what I want to do against that, and I use that as my filter. And before long, you'll be walking with God and not ahead of God. Anyone here ever walk ahead of God in your life? How many of us walk without God in our life? I mean, I've walked ahead of myself so far. I shared that story. We had bought a house more or less sight unseen. We were living in that, buying another house, just moving in, and I was already looking at another house down the road because that one was cooler than this one I was just getting. Was I getting ahead of myself? How about ahead of our finances? Absolutely. But I was chasing something. I was chasing happiness, and I was doing it in material things. If I could just have that place over the hill, life's going to be so good, honey. It's going to be fantastic. We just buy that house over the hill. Forget about the one we're buying right now and the one we just sold. It's that one over the hill. How many of you know there's another one over the next hill and the next hill? When we get ahead of ourselves, that's one issue. But when we get ahead of God and His plans for us, we're back still by ourselves. Psalms 27:14 says this. This is David speaking to us. Wait on the Lord. Oh, that wait word. Wait. Who here likes to wait? Do you realize that this country, we like waiting less than we ever liked waiting before? I mean, let's go back to the good old days when you only had a phone call when you got home and somebody took a message for you and it was written down, please call so-and-so as soon as possible. Now we got the cell phones. Oh, you want to know where Timbuktu is? Well, I can't go to my 1970 encyclopedia set. It isn't there anymore. Now we've got Google. We're getting so fast that we're getting ahead of ourselves, and we're definitely sometimes getting ahead of God. To slow down and wait is hard. But yet David, even in these days, says, wait on the Lord. Then he says this, be of good courage. Sometimes it's scary to wait. Man, that pickup's on the car lot. It's going to get sold. It's such a nice pickup. I want to have that pickup on me. If I wait another day, if I wait on the Lord, I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray right now. Dear Lord, let me get that pickup. But Lord, it's not going to be there long, Sandy. It's a fantastic pickup. In fact, I'm going to go buy it and I'll thank the Lord for it when He finally says yes a week from now. Yeah. Oh, hey, I got the same thinking you guys got, okay? Yeah, I know. He says this, be of good courage, so we're supposed to wait on the Lord. Now we're going to have courage while we wait, and we need courage to wait on the Lord, because when we get nervous, we want to just do action. This thing looks scary, so I just want to make it go away, so I'm going to do whatever it takes, and I'll kind of talk to the Lord about it later. He says, and he shall strengthen your heart. Man, he hits it. To wait takes courage. And it takes the strengthening of our heart. And the only way we strengthen our heart is through the strength that comes from Jesus Christ. In other words, he's our filter. But how many of us struggle to wait? Wait. Man, I can't wait. I can't wait. It's just got to happen now. I'll worry about it later with God. I want to go to 1 Samuel 9. And I'm going to cruise through this rather fast. I'm changing this up a little bit. 1 Samuel 9, verses 27 through 10:9. Now this is when Samuel anoints Saul. And so I just want to read a few of these verses so you understand where we're at. So Samuel meets Saul, and Saul meets Samuel, and Samuel says this in verse 27 of 1 Samuel 9. It says, as they were going down to the outskirts of the city, Samuel said to Saul, tell the servant to go on ahead of us. And he went on. But you stand here a while, that I may announce to you the word of God. Then Samuel took a flask of oil and poured it on his head and kissed him and said, is it not because the Lord has anointed you commander over his inheritance? When you have departed from me today, you will find 2 men by Rachel's tomb in the territory of Benjamin, at Zelzah, and they will say to you, the donkeys which you went to look for have been found. And now your father has ceased caring about the donkey and is worried about you, saying, what shall I do about my son? And then you shall go on forward from there and come to the Terebinth tree of Tabor. There 3 men going up to God at Bethel will meet you, one carrying 3 young goats, another carrying 3 loaves of bread, and another carrying a skin of wine. And they will greet you and give you 2 loaves of bread, which you shall receive from their hands. After that you shall come to the hill of God, where the Philistine garrison is. And it will happen when you have come there to the city that you will meet a group of prophets coming down from the high place with a stringed instrument, a tambourine, a flute, and a harp before them, and they will be prophesying. Just hang with me, I'm going to read just a couple more verses. Then the Spirit of the Lord will come upon you, and you will prophesy with them and be turned into another man. And let it be when these signs come to you that you do as the occasion demands, for God is with you. You shall go down before me to Gilgal, and surely I will come down to you to offer burnt offerings and make sacrifices of peace offerings. 7 days you shall wait till I come to you and show you what you should do. And so it was when he had turned his back to go from Samuel that God gave him another heart, and all those signs came to pass that day. So we've got a lot of reading going on there, but what I want you to be impacted by is that when God has a plan, when he has something figured out the way he wants to do it, sometimes it makes no sense at all to us. He can make a mushroom in a day, but it takes 100 years to build an oak. Why is that? He could make an oak tree in one day if he so chose. Why did he have to see all these signs? Some of that is because it gives you a restoration. It gives you a peace that says you're on the right track. Tonight, people saying kind things to Sandy and I tells us that there's some fruit for our labors. We're restored, we're refreshed to say, you know what? It's working. God is working through us to speak into other people's lives, and you guys are working too to speak into other people's lives. So it restores you. But it's also that you need to wait on God. I wish this place was packed all the time. I wish this place had 3 services going on all the time. But it doesn't. But we just continue to march on with God. And he will do what he wants to do here if we'll follow his plan. And so when we see all these different things that take place, donkeys and loaves of bread and all these things, they're signs that you're following God's plan, but they're also a chance to be obedient to God's plan. See, God has a plan for every one of us, the Bible says, but how many of us struggle to walk the plan? So many times we start out, we've got good intentions, but then things come up. Things get in the way. There's pressures all of a sudden. There's financial issues. There's relationship issues. And all of a sudden we take the bull by the horns and say, God, just relax. I know I'm walking with you, but just sit down for a while. Let me do my own thing. And when I get that taken care of, I'm coming back and saying, let's get going again. But that's not how God works. We get nervous. We get anxious when things don't seem to be going right. We think we need to problem solve all the time. But do you think God's sitting up there wringing his hands going, oh man, I didn't expect this one. Oh, what do I do? What do I do? Not at all. He moves at his pace because he created everything. And he knows today and he knows tomorrow. He's got it covered. But so many of us don't dive deep enough into Jesus Christ to have that peace that passes all understanding, knowing that I'm walking with God and He has the best in store for me yet to come. We dive back into our flesh. Our flesh says we worry, we have fear, we've got to solve the problem. If I can solve the problem, everything's going to be fine. And so Samuel anoints Saul, and so Saul's supposed to do all these different steps. Now I'm going to go to 13, 1 Samuel 13, and read you 7 through 14. 1 Samuel 13, starting in verse 7. And some of the Hebrews crossed over the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. As for Saul, he was still in Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. Things weren't going well. The Philistines were about ready to run him over. And then he waited 7 days. Remember, he was supposed to wait 7 days to do the offering when Samuel comes. So he waited that time, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. So Saul, he's in a bad spot, Saul is. People are trembling. They're bound to be attacked. They need to talk to God. They want to, make sure that they're not destroyed. And I've got to take things, where's Samuel? He's not here, so I've got to take things into my own hands. And so he offered the burnt offering in the place. Now what happened, as soon as he had finished presenting the burnt offering, that Samuel came and Saul went out to meet him, that he might greet him. Samuel said, "What have you done?" Saul said, "When I saw that the people were scattered from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines gathered together at Michmash, then I said, the Philistines will now come down on me at Gilgal, and I have not made supplication to the Lord. Therefore I felt compelled and offered a burnt offering." Samuel goes on to say, "You messed up." How many of us could say we want to follow God and we're doing just fine until it gets scary? Until it looks like things are falling apart. Man, when we started the church here, I used to stand out the window and just stare, hoping a car would turn in. We started with 14 people. Oh, is that car slowing down? No, it was just a deer. Hey, there's one turning in, there's one turning in. Oh, they just were going up to the cemetery. Boy, Henry Vanderbush said, be in the book of Acts, don't be in the book of Numbers. There's truth to that. Because the world would say, look at the numbers. How many people got going? If I tell someone I'm pastor at the Cowboy Church, one of the first things they often say is, how many people go to your church out there? They don't say, how many people are diving deeper in Christ? They want to know the numbers. We're bean counters, we are. And so we always go to that. So when Saul sees that things are falling apart, it didn't matter that he said, I will come in 7 days. It didn't matter. He saw all these wonderful signs proving that God had anointed him, that he would become king. He saw all these wonderful blessings, yet the day comes and he can't wait. He's nervous and he goes ahead and does the offering ahead of time. He went ahead of God. How many of us do that in our spiritual walk? Right now you're saying, I'm fired up for God. I just can't wait to get out there in these doors and go after it for God. But then Monday comes. And we wake up and there's a phone call and there's a flat tire and there's all these different things. And before long, we're borrowing money, doing all these different things, trying to get ourselves out of the problem, but we never stop and pray about it. We never bring our problems before God. Bring them before our wife, or we talk to our co-workers, or all these different things. Right now the big thing is the election. Who's going to win the election? A lot of people have a lot of strong thoughts about that. We can talk about it, but are we praying about it? Talk is cheap when it comes down to what's going to happen. God's looking for people that will pray. Ruby gave me a list at 8 o'clock, and I know some of them are doing it. I think Deb's doing it already. 8 o'clock every night, they want you to pray for safety of the USA, world peace, election, that Bible will remain basis for laws governing our land, and Christianity will grow in the United States of America. We talk all about politics. We talk all about the problems of the world. But are we getting on our knees saying, God, I'm going to walk at your speed. I'm going to walk in your direction. And you tell me to get down on my knees and pray for this country. We talk about it, but we don't necessarily talk to the right person about it. Saul did like we often do. We follow the signs. We receive the blessings. But then when it gets nitty-gritty, sometimes we bail and we get ahead of ourselves. God, of course. Now, we had this whole thing about this kidney thing going on with me, and they saw a black spot, and it could be cancerous and all this and that, so I did that MRI. Remember, I was in that tube and all that, and we got good reports. It's not cancerous, it's not a tumor, there is a cyst there, but it's just a normal cyst that people oftentimes have. I do have kidney disease, but if I'll watch what I eat, that can help. And so last Wednesday, I'm driving my truck down Highway 87, running over to Wolf Lake to drop something off about the tractor they're working on. And this semi comes barreling, kind of like the joke. This semi comes out of the darkness, comes barreling. And I'm going about 50 and I'm enjoying. I got some worship music on and I'm talking to God about the sermon and different things. And this pickup comes, or this truck comes, this semi, and it's like, God, this light's shining right on me. And the more he pushes on me, the faster I'm going. Now I'm going about 65 and he just keeps on my butt. I just want to go slow and enjoy the 87 drive. And he's on my butt, and I'm like, just pass if you can. But you can't pass much on 87. And so we go around 2 curves, and I'm not looking at him because I don't want to be mad. And I'm like, Lord, this is just crazy. I don't want to be upset. And I look up, and it's gone. It's gone. And I look all around safely. It's gone. We're going about 65, and in seconds, it's gone. And so I shared that with Sandy, and then today she came to me and said, I believe I know what that meant. I believe on that day God removed the cancer out of your body.
Wow.
Amen.
And I'm going to take that as true. Because the next morning, good bill of health. Because that truck disappeared. I mean, it rattled me. It disappeared. And so I'm going to take that blessing. But if I'm here preaching and I'm taking those blessings of God, then He just reassured me that I got your back. He reassured me that I want you to live. Got more for you to do. So then why tomorrow will I be like, where's God in my life? He doesn't show me anything. He never provides what I need. The heck He don't. But will He open our eyes to see it? That's the key. His ways are not our ways. Some of us would just bowl and get it done. He might take a year to do something we can do in 5 minutes. But will you walk the speed of God? Or will you get ahead? John Corson, in his book, Application Commentary 2005, said, the Lord's timing is not ours. His is perfect. Like, yeah. You ever heard about how they grow Chinese bamboo? They take a seed, they put it in the ground. They water it, they fertilize it. The first year, nothing happens. The second year, they water it, they fertilize it, nothing happens. The third year, they water it, fertilize it, nothing happens. The fourth year, they do the same thing, water it, fertilize it, nothing happens. The fifth year, they water it and fertilize it, and in 6 weeks' time, it grows 90 feet. Now, did it just grow 90 feet that last 50 year? That's when it finally started growing, or was there 5 years of preparation for it to grow to that point? The point I'm making is if you'll walk with God at the speed of God, not get ahead of God, He's got plans even while we wait for the big Shazam moment. He'll walk us every day and show us great things and give us blessings. But He says, will you walk with me at my speed? When we go shopping we don't ever go shopping at West Acres, I guess it is. Sandy wants to kind of zip here or there and go to different stores, and I just want to sit in those really nice cushion chairs they got for guys there. And then we had a girl from Columbia, and we went to Mall of America, and we had, half a day to be there? And so we started at the bottom floor, and she walked so slow. And in my head, I'm thinking, we got 4 floors and hundreds of stores to go in. And we'd say, okay, nothing here, let's go. And she'd be like, oh, wait a minute. This is beautiful. I share that with you because your husband or your wife might be trying to walk at the speed of God, and you're so anxious to get moving that you kick him in the rear and say, quit going so slow. But yet he's trying to walk with God. So a family needs to come together to say, what are we doing here? If we're walking with God, then it doesn't matter about the speed. We're walking with God, the creator of everything. Who doesn't want to do that? Because I've walked on my own many times, and man, I can tell you stories. Oofta. Failure after failure. Growing bamboo. A period of 6 weeks and grew up to 90 feet. Several feet per day. It's crazy. Someone once said, the trouble is that I'm in a hurry, but God isn't. That's another one that we face. You got to ask yourselves, are we prepared to take the awful patience or the awful patient way of God? We must not be infected by the world's valuation of either speed or success. The old story of WD-40, 40 times to get it right. Someone asked a lady one time, she said, you keep telling your son to quit doing that. She said, this is the 20th time I've had to tell him. They said, why did you quit? She said, because if I didn't do it the 20th time, I would have wasted the 19 times that I had him almost there. In other words, if we keep getting persistent with God, we can see victory. Man, sometimes it seems like it's dry. It's this dry place, but oftentimes it's because we've walked away. Or maybe he stopped and he said, wait on the Lord. Be of good courage. He shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. See, David knows what we're talking about, because David, at the age of 16, was anointed king. But he wasn't king until he was 30 years old. How many of you, if they said, guess what, you're going to inherit $10 million in 25 years? Why can't I have it now? You watch some of the detective shows, they get it. They try to get it right away. Waiting on God. He's got fantastic things for us. Heaven awaits us for those that believe. But He's got things for us to do here while we wait to be there. Keep that in mind. Don't get ahead of God. David knows from experiences. And meanwhile, while he's waiting for that at 30 years old, Saul's trying to kill him because Saul's jealous. He could have killed Saul. He could have ended it all. He could have said, instead of waiting until I'm 30, I'm going to kill him today in this cave, and I'll be king sooner. But he was obedient to God. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes you wait a while. Things to make you go, James Garfield, before he was president, was a president of the Hiram College in Ohio. A father once came into his office and he said, there's a particular course of study that my son's in. Couldn't it be simplified so he could get through it faster? He could move on in a shorter route. Garfield said, well, certainly we can do that, but it all depends on what you want to make of your boy. He said, when God wants to make an oak tree, He takes 100 years. When He wants to make a squash, He takes a summer. He's preparing us for things. He's building us up for things. He's asking, will you walk with me in the good times? But will you walk with me when it seems like there's bad times? We got to touch on it one more time. Tougher times are coming for us believers in Jesus Christ. Tougher times are coming. And if we'll see victories in the small areas now, while it's not so life-threatening per se, we're going to be stronger to deal with it when somebody comes and faces us down the road with possible jail time or possible death. Who knows what it might be. It's happening all over the world. It's just getting here, but it's coming fast. I don't say that to scare you. I say that because we have hope in Jesus Christ, that we follow His plan. We're doing the best thing that we can do. Don't get ahead of God. We get ahead of ourselves sometimes. We got to work through that and repent and move on with God, but don't get ahead of God. It's His timing. It's His plan. He's not shaking up there. He's not saying, I've got to get it done in a couple of weeks. He knows the timing of everything. Bow your heads and close your eyes. Heavenly Father, we're human beings, and we mess up. We get in a pattern sometimes of going so fast, trying to solve our own problems all the time, that we forget to come to You, the greatest problem solver in the world, in the universe. We feel we've got to solve it somehow. If we don't get it figured out, we're going to crash and burn. We're going to lose our house. We might lose our car. We might lose